Hi folks, Florida Man here. Today I'm bringing you a pretty quick after-action report on a game I played years ago on Play Diplomacy, one of my oldest games, so I've reconstructed it with the Backstabber Sandbox feature. I played as Russia. The game was given the super creative name of Gameee with 4 E's. In spring 1901, I have a fairly conservative plan. I'm working with Turkey, we're going to do a juggernaut. I open with all guns blazing towards Austria. I take Galicia and Ukraine, I bounce with Turkey in the Black Sea, as is pretty standard in the meta of diplomacy currently, probably for decades going back into the past, and for decades into the future if I had to guess. Austria believed my assurances of friendship more than he believed anything that Italy might have said to him, so he opened south and he protected Trieste rather than leaving units in Vienna or Budapest. This will give me a free shot at one of those centers in the south. I was also successful at keeping relations with the West good, and we see England opened hostile to France, moving to the Channel and Wales, rather than opening in any way that could potentially be hostile to me. Germany opened so as to give up any possibility of bouncing me in Sweden, taking Holland first instead of Denmark. This is great. Luck and planning are combining perfectly here. France opened to Picardy and Burgundy and Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and I would say he's making some mistakes already. He probably didn't know in advance that England would be hostile to him, because people usually don't announce that in advance, but France has chosen to further kick the hornet's nest by pushing hard to get Belgium, which Germany clearly also wants, and in order to do this, France has deliberately given up the possibility of acquiring one of the Iberian centers in 1901. In the south, we see Turkey make the most common Turkish opening possible, which is also the typical opening for Turkey if he's in a juggernaut, while Italy opened in a way that I would interpret as hostile to Austria more than anyone else. He moved Rome to Tuscany, Venice held in place. So he's not convoying into Tunis, which means he's not going to be able to convoy toward Turkey without making a few moves to arrange his units to make that possible. Going to fall 1901, unfortunately, both Austria and Turkey failed to enter orders. This was a game with 12-hour turns, so this doesn't indicate that anyone's given up. It just means that the players are not completely on the ball all the time. The great thing about those games is that they automatically come with a sense of excitement, and they move fast. And the worst thing about them is that people will miss seasons. I didn't miss this season, though. I walked into the undefended Vienna, as well as Romania and Sweden. My position is looking very strong at the moment. In the south, Italy moved to Piedmont, took Tunis, and tried to walk Venice into Trieste, the last of which failed because Austria didn't move out of Trieste. In the west, France only got one build because he was forced to defend Brest and bounce England's convoy attempt there. The English distraction ensured that Germany would get Belgium as well. In the build phase, I was able to get armies in Warsaw and Moscow and a fleet in St. Pete's, north coast, which tells you a little about where I was thinking of going next. This is one of the dangers of throwing everything you can at France in 1901 England. England gets a fleet in London while France builds a fleet in Brest, and Germany builds 2 armies. In the West, the fact of the Anglo-German alliance is now virtually undeniable. We will see how well they perform against the French. In the south, Italy builds a fleet in Rome, which is a surprising choice. It seems he's genuinely going to try to join the fight against France, based on this, despite just trying to take Trieste. Turkey built a fleet too, which might give Italy a reason to reconsider his direction. Austria had no builds because of his NMR and loss of Vienna. In spring 1902, sure enough, Italy moved into the Ionian Sea and Tyrrhenian Sea and supported his Piedmont unit into Tyrolia, preparing for another attack on Trieste and probably an attack on Turkey as well. I supported Turkey into Serbia and moved Vienna to Budapest, hoping to bounce with an Austrian move while I brought my Warsaw army down to Galicia. Everything we tried in the south, including the anticipated bounce, succeeded. In the north, I also took Norway. England moved to North Sea, preparing to face the threat of my North Coast fleet, but it was just a little too slow to save Norway. England didn't enter a retreat, so that Norway fleet got destroyed for really no good reason. France entered purely defensive orders, and for this season, he succeeded in preventing much progress. But he also pulled back from Burgundy to Marseille, potentially weakening his defense slightly. Germany made the logical decisions to occupy Denmark and push an army into Ruhr, so Germany should be able to guarantee Burgundy in the coming season, unless he and England make a mistake or choose to prioritize taking Picardy, which they failed to do this season. In fall, England and Germany try something different, but they continue to be focused on Burgundy or Picardy, which is a narrow avenue of attack that they really have no choice about attempting, but the result is that France succeeds in defending those spaces. France's defense here is very good. It really couldn't have been much better if France had actually predicted England's moves. France bounced the English move to the Channel, and he bounced the move to Burgundy, and not only was this a good moveset for the orders that England and Germany actually tried, it would have been even better if England and Germany had made the same basic moves as in the spring. Looking at my situation in the east, you can see the Juggernaut is rolling along very effectively. Turkey takes Greece despite Austria's support for his own unit there. I successfully support Galicia into Budapest and attempted to support Italy into Trieste. Unfortunately for Italy, he failed to enter orders here. Those darn 12-hour deadlines again. But the important thing is that Turkey and I are doing very well. Italy might be voted off the team shortly. In the build phase, Turkey builds another 2 fleets, which shows exactly where he's going next. I build an army and another North Coast fleet, which I like to think suggests that the Anglo-German alliance are now on borrowed time. With their failure to advance against France at all in 1902, they are now in serious trouble. Germany and France each get a new army. The meaning of the new French army is that he can now defend Burgundy confidently for another season. I don't know what path of attack the Anglo-German alliance will take, but they are in really bad shape right now. They could definitely use a Mediterranean front. In spring 1903, you can see the Juggernaut continues to roll forward. I had convinced Germany I would help him to advance and not attack him if he supported me into North Sea. So you see he did that, positioning me to go after England. Unfortunately for Germany, I also began shifting my armies in the center of the map toward him. In this situation, there was just too much upside to invading Germany. The situation in the northwest was even more perfect because England kept pushing more units toward France for the continuing Anglo-German attack on him. He was actually vacating North Sea willingly, and he moved Yorkshire down to Wales, leaving Edinburgh completely indefensible, and his other fleet was already down in the mid-Atlantic Ocean. England looks very vulnerable to me, in short. Meanwhile, in the south, I support Turkey into the last Austrian centre, overcoming Italy's simultaneous effort to take that centre. Somewhat understandably, Italy still believed he was on the same page with me, and that he would be allowed to take Trieste and not have to worry about a Turkish attack right now. This led him to move his units towards France, and he vacated Ionian, allowing Turkey to get into a premium position for attacking him. It was a great time for the Juggernaut. And this season, by the way, England was forcibly surrendered for cheating. I don't think the English player was cheating in this game, or if he was, it was going very poorly, but I'm guessing the moderators caught him engaged in some sketchy behavior in some other games, and they were investigating him. They must have had pretty compelling evidence because the forcible surrender is a pretty harsh remedy, and I think Play Diplomacy is pretty good at policing this stuff, more so than most websites, I suspect. Fortunately, in fall 1903, we recruited a new English player. Very quick. Also in fall 1903, Germany posted something weird in the public press. It was an image of Putin, Vladimir Putin, on a Ritz. This game was back in 2014, when this was still a funny joke. I have always personally also been fond of bad puns. Despite the new English player, I was able to walk into Edinburgh. It was indefensible thanks to his predecessor's actions. Still, New England was able to prevent me from backfilling the North Sea, which would limit any further expansion for the moment. Elsewhere, France supported himself into Burgundy successfully, with Germany distracted trying to deal with me. My units moved up around Germany, meanwhile, surrounding his homeland for a strike next year. To the south, Turkey and I were stonewalled by Italy, who seems to have predicted our lines of attack pretty perfectly, or at least countered them perfectly. Still, all the momentum remained with the Juggernaut. In the build phase, I got a new army in St. Pete, Turkey got a Smyrna fleet, and England destroyed his mid-Atlantic Ocean fleet. In spring 1904, the war machine pressed forward on all fronts. In the north, with England weakened, I was able to support myself into the North Sea and position my St. Pete army for a convoy. I took Berlin, and I forced my way into Tyrolia to support my Turkish ally. Very unfortunately, at the same time, Turkey issued a bad set of orders that led him to lose Trieste, which was completely unnecessary. He retreated to Albania, the space he had just vacated. Fortunately, at least his convoy to Apulia is good positioning for the fall. France is also moving down around the Italian boot, so we will see if he begins making it harder for us to advance. In fall, Italy fails to enter orders at perhaps the worst possible moment. This results in the destruction of his Trieste unit, which should have been able to retreat to Budapest, even though it was inevitably going to be hard for Italy to retain that center when France and I were trying to retake it. At the same time, Turkey supports himself into Naples successfully. That couldn't have been prevented unless Venice tapped Apulia and Turanian bounced the move to Naples. France was clearly trying to help Italy here, but the Italian failure to order thoroughly undermined that effort. In the north, I grappled with Germany and traded Berlin for Munich, while France convoyed onto the English island. I had been trying to get England to essentially be my puppet, which is why North Sea and Edinburgh just supported each other to hold here, but England instead also supported himself to hold and did nothing to block France from advancing. In the build, we see I construct a St. Pete North Coast fleet, while Turkey builds another fleet and Germany destroys his Berlin army, reflecting that Germany is beginning to change his perspective regarding the fight with me. Maybe it's unwinnable for him. More on that later. Going to spring 1905, I was so frustrated about England's actions in response to my persuasion efforts that I blew up at him a little in the public press. I said, "England, you're going to get crushed by France. I would have let you live. Hence, you're an idiot." From Russia with annoyance. Germany chimed in and posted a picture that was labeled Sadimir Putin, which is hilarious to me now, and actually made me laugh even then. It's hard to believe I was so annoyed about the English decision, rather than this being a bit forced on my part, a way to pretend that things were not basically going as I'd planned. For you see, they kind of are. In the spring orders, we see I lose the North Sea, but I do take Berlin without losing Munich, and I'm also negotiating DMZs of spaces that Turkey and I share. This is always a good first step toward eventually stabbing your Turkish ally as Russia, so it's good progress as far as my long-term plans are concerned. Additionally, Turkey takes Venice this season. Italy isn't issuing orders at the moment, so he's sort of a sitting duck. France walks into Liverpool this season, which makes clear that if England gets Edinburgh back from me, it will be a trade for Liverpool going to France. In fall, that's just what happens, but planning for that, I move my fleets into position to hopefully retake Edinburgh in the future. I'm also continuing to trade blows with France and Germany. I lose Munich now, but I take Denmark. France is in trouble, because with England and Germany weak, and Italy collapsing in the south, he's going to be spread very thin, trying to manage the decline of these powers who are supposed to be his shields. After this season, Italy is reduced to Tunis, Germany is reduced to Kiel, Holland, and Belgium, and England is just London and Edinburgh. After the 1905 builds, you can see I outnumber the Western powers at sea, unless France pulls his units that are defending him against Turkey up to fight me in the north. Going to spring 1906, I was able to take advantage of a previous grudge between France and Germany from all the years of warfare, as well as an increasing German sense of the futility of resistance against me, to make Germany my janissary. I supported him into Munich, and he supported himself into Burgundy, at the same time that I pulled back my other armies from around Germany to attack Turkey. I've calculated that now is the moment when I should begin my solo run effort. It's a gamble, because everything I'm doing could backfire. I could easily lose Berlin this season. Turkey could see what's coming and deflect some of my moves against him. And it doesn't go perfectly according to plan. Turkey was supposed to advance Trieste into Venice and Venice into Tuscany, which would allow me to easily take Trieste and Serbia in the fall. Those Turkish moves bounced thanks to France. On the bright side, France has pulled mid-Atlantic Ocean south to deal with Turkey, which puts it further away from helping him against me. France's tempo in the Northern Naval War is in bad shape. I retake the North Sea, which positions me to have a good shot at Edinburgh soon. In fall, I turn this into a successful convoy into Edinburgh, though that's partly fueled by a French misorder. He meant to support Edinburgh to hold, and he instead ordered support for North Sea to hold. Still, that error isn't nearly as damaging as what's happening in the center of the map. Germany waltzes into Paris and follows up by moving Munich to Burgundy, allowing me to retake Munich without losing Berlin. This disaster for France occurs at the same time that he's continuing to fight Turkey in the south. This is the moment when the two of them really should have found a way to join forces. Instead, they fight over Tunis and Venice, with France taking Venice from Turkey, and Turkey successfully winning the fight for Tunis. And at the same time, I take Serbia and Tyrolia and position for attacks on Trieste, Bulgaria, and the Turkish home centers. In the build phase, with my naval superiority secure, I build 3 new armies. Turkey makes the terrible mistake of destroying one of the units in his home centers. France wisely destroys a southern unit, although perhaps it should have been an army rather than a fleet, and Germany gets a new army in Kiel. In spring 1907, France proposed a 2-way draw between me and Turkey, which Germany helpfully and promptly rejected. A war of public press mockery began between Germany and France at this point, which I won't get into too much here. You can look it up if you're interested using the game number that's in the video description. It's all public. The bottom line is that they are now pretty firmly against each other, if they weren't already, which can only help me. When spring orders process, I've allowed Germany to retake Berlin, which is part of how I'm keeping him on side. I can afford this loss thanks to how much he's weakened France, allowing me to immediately take Liverpool. In the south, I'm doing even better, forcing my way into Trieste and walking into the Turkish home center of Constantinople. Turkey guessed my attack pattern incorrectly this time. I'm also pulling more armies south to join in the fun. In fall 1907, my enemies are in chaos. France is in damage control mode, and his moves aren't all optimized for stopping the solo. He convoys his army off of England, preventing any effort to retake those centers from me. In the southeast, the problem for France is that Turkey doesn't listen to him. France tried to support Turkey back into Trieste, and Turkey squandered that support with an unsuccessful attempt to take Serbia back instead. So France loses Venice and Turkey gains nothing in exchange. In the Turkish homeland, I lose Constantinople and retreat into Smyrna, so there's nothing lost by the failure to keep that center. It's a great season. In the build phase, I construct 2 more armies and a south coast fleet because I don't want Germany to think he can just retake Munich and be a real great power again, and abandon all his Janissary obligations. Sure enough, Germany does have another new army, so that's a real concern. France frankly makes bizarre destroy choices. He gets rid of 2 fleets, choosing the Channel Fleet over the Mid-Atlantic Fleet, and the Spanish Fleet over, for example, the utterly useless Piedmont Army. Turkey also makes a strange choice in that he doesn't destroy the Tunis Fleet, but destroys both of the units he had protecting Italy. It feels a little like they're not properly focused on the actual threat, namely me. We'll see how those choices pay off. In spring 1908, thanks to everyone's apparent indifference, I'm able to take London and Rome. I also retake Kiel, although Germany moves into Munich at the same time. France is busy fighting Germany rather than me, while Turkey is out of position to defend the Italian centers, thanks to those destroys I mentioned. I'm also repositioning in the southeast to guarantee I won't lose Smyrna. By fall, the writing is on the wall that this will likely be a Russian solo no matter what anyone does. Germany walks out of Munich, I basically hold steady, and the game resolves. This is the final position of the map. It was a hard-fought game, and I think they could have stopped me almost to the last minute. This was one of those times when internal divisions among my enemies made all the difference. I have often said in diplomacy games, and probably in these commentary videos, that a group of countries in a stop-the-solo alliance needs to try acting like a single country rather than a group of squabbling neighbors. Here, the reverse of that lesson was put into practice. I hope you liked this Florida Man Diplomacy production. If so, the best way to quickly express it is by pushing the subscribe button and watching more videos. We also like it when people like and comment. And I would like to thank the individuals named in the credits here, because they help fuel this channel's growth, through contributions on Patreon, or by translating the videos into other languages. You too can join the Alligator Army by becoming one of my patrons. Until next time, Florida Man, out.